Cool facts about Jay Leno's garage. The most asked question is how many cars does Jay Leno have? There isn't an exact figure, but it's estimated that Jay Leno owns around 180 vehicles and 160 motorcycles. According to the Automotive Hall of Fame, his first car was a 1934 Ford pickup truck that he purchased when he was 16. The truck was traded for a Datsun 1600. After moving to the West Coast, he treated himself to his first luxury car, a 1955 Buick Roadmaster. This Roadmaster would be the beginning of his rise to becoming one of the most prominent car collectors. It's still part of his collection. Jay Leno has a reputation for not selling his cars, but we know of at least one vehicle the car collector got rid of. It was a Tesla Model S P90D, and he didn't get rid of the car because he didn't like it. He only sold it to make room for a Tesla Model S Plaid, which is his daily car. In fact, Leno is a big fan of electric vehicles and bought in on the concept long before it became cool. In 2011, he became one of the few to buy a Chevrolet Volt. General Motors was way ahead of the curve with this car, and Leno ran it for a year and used less than half a tank of gas. After that came the two Teslas. The second most asked question is, which is Jay Leno's favorite car? We'd have a hard time choosing just one, but according to Leno, it's his 1972 Mercedes-Benz 600 compressor. We thought it would have been the 1994 McLaren F1 for sure. The third question is how much Leno pays for car insurance. Jay Leno's garage has made several videos with Haggerty, so he likely has a deal worked out with them. That deal is private, but Jerry Insurance crunched the numbers, and it estimates that Jay Leno's cars cost roughly $1.1 million per year to insure. 1. 1994 McLaren F1. Yes, it's an obvious choice, but the McLaren F1 will always be part of a discussion of the greatest car ever made. All auto enthusiasts dream of driving an F1 at least once, but chances are slim. As we mentioned earlier, only 106 were made, and it's an angry, naturally aspirated V12 rear-wheel drive vehicle. The BMW-built S70/2 V12 was never used in any other cars, and its figures are impressive to this day. It produces 618 horsepower and 479 pound-feet of torque. The F1 will always have a place in history, having set the world record for the fastest production car with a spectacular 240.1 miles per hour. Then there's the impressive Le Mans victory. The list goes on and on. Jay Leno owns one of 25 units built in 1994. It's a rather elegant example, finished in black with a subtle red line down the flanks. He did not purchase it new, however. The first owner was a Dutch racing driver who sold it to Leno for $80,000. The car's value today is estimated to be $12 million, which is on the low side for an F1. Why? Because Leno drives it like the car gods intended. It's one of the most high-mileage examples out there, but still one of the most expensive cars in his collection. 2. Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing. The 300 SL Gullwing Coupe is a motorsport and design icon. After World War II, Mercedes-Benz decided to go racing again in 1952. It built the Mercedes-Benz W194, and it was an extremely successful endurance racer. The secret to the racing car's success was its lightweight aluminum chassis, which, combined with wide sills, made it impossible to equip the vehicle with regular doors, and that's how Gullwing doors were born. The Germans were not planning on building a road-legal version, but its official US-based importer convinced Merck it would be a good idea. The result was the 300 SL Gullwing Coupe. Roughly 1,400 were built, and 80% of those were sold in the USA. Jay Leno's model is unique. It was a barn find, but in the desert. Leno paid to restore everything underneath, but he kept the red exterior with the number 263 as abused as he found it. If you're a regular viewer of Jay Leno's Garage, you'll know he loves a car with a story. And if you look at the body of this car, it definitely has a story to tell. 3. 1963 Chrysler turbine car. Like the gull wing above, the Chrysler turbine also has a connection to WY2. Chrysler started researching turbine engines for planes in the 1930s, but nothing came of it. Following the war, the company had all of this proprietary technology and nothing to do with it, so it decided to see if a turbine could power a car. It could, and Chrysler built 55. Powering a car with a turbine engine is not as silly as it sounds. A turbine engine lasts longer than a combustion engine and has fewer moving parts. But you need pretty expensive parts to make such an engine, so the Chrysler turbine was canned in 1964. Apparently, only 2 operational models are left in private hands, and Jay Leno owns one. Even cooler is that he's not afraid to take it out for a blast. 4. 1925. E20 Doble Leno owns a host of steam-powered vehicles, one of which put him in the hospital late last year. If you look at his love for EVs, the turbine car above, and his collection of steam cars, it's quite evident that he's interested in all means of propulsion. If only more so-called enthusiasts were as open-minded. We settled on the E20 Doble for 2 reasons. Leno is on record stating that it's the best steam car ever made, and it has a remarkable history. First, the reason why it's the best ever made. The Doble's steam engine produces 150 horsepower, roughly what a Nissan Sentra's naturally aspirated 2.0-liter 4-pot produces these days. The torque figure is more impressive, however. It has 1,000 pound-feet available from rest, which is on par with Leno's Plaid. This particular example was formerly owned by Howard Hughes, another forward-thinking American. All of the above makes the Doble one of the most impressive cars in Jay Leno's collection. 5. 1967 Lamborghini Miura P400. The Lamborghini Miura is widely regarded as the world's first supercar, though Jay Leno disagrees. He believes that the accolade belongs to the 300 SL Gullwing mentioned earlier. It was an expensive car when it was new, but nowadays it's a piece of unobtainium. You won't find Lamborghini's first mid-engine V12 supercar for less than $1 million. So, how much did Jay Leno pay for this fine example? Nothing. Zilch. Nada. A grand total of $0. This particular example was a gift from a father to a son. The son blew the engine and the dad just gave it to Leno. Leno had it restored, and he's often spotted driving it around. This has to count as one of the best car deals ever made. 6. 1970 Mazda Cosmo 110S. Here's yet another example of Leno's love of engineering. The Cosmo was the first production Mazda equipped with a rotary engine. Without this car, there would be no RX-7. Mercedes also played around with the Wankel engine for a bit, first invented in 1924, but it will always be synonymous with Mazda. The 110S was equipped with a 2-rotor engine displacing less than 1 liter, yet it produced 110 horsepower, which is where the name comes from. The later Series 2 model, which Leno owns, had a slightly more powerful 128 horsepower version of the motor. Leno's Cosmo is believed to be the only model in the USA, but it's not stock. Instead of sticking with the original engine, Leno replaced it with the 12A twin-rotor from the first-generation Mazda RX-7. 4 GT. Take your pick. Leno owns both the 2005 original and the carbon fiber-bodied 2018 successor. Both cars are tastefully finished. The older model is red with white stripes, while the EcoBoost V6-powered model is black with orange stripes. We dig the 2005 4 GT because it was built as a Ferrari killer, meant to go up against the 360. Ford overshot a bit and famously equipped the car with a supercharged V8 borrowed from a truck. Even though this engine had somewhat agricultural roots, it produced 550 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque. It annihilated the 360, which had a naturally aspirated flat-plane V8 that only produced 395 horsepower. The GT even beat the 360's successor, the F430. The 2018 Ford GT beat Ferrari on and off the track. It secured a class victory at Le Mans and gave the Ferrari 488 a spanking on the road. As you might know, Leno doesn't own a single Ferrari. He doesn't like the way the brand treats its customers and the hoops you have to jump through to get your hands on a limited production model. Which brings us to our next car on the list. 8. 2005 Porsche Carrera GT, along with the McLaren F1. This is another car in Jay Leno's collection that's arguably the most excellent car ever made. By now, the story of this car is well known. The 5.7-liter V10 was initially developed for motorsport, but the regulations changed. Instead of canning the engine, Porsche used it for its Naughty's Halo model. The GT is a gnarly car that doesn't suffer fools. It's equipped with a 6-speed manual gearbox and very few electronic nannies. Along the same lines, Leno also owns a McLaren P1. He could afford any one of the Holy Trinity, but he settled for the P1, widely regarded as the most dangerous of the three. More importantly, McLaren didn't require customers to jump through hoops to buy a P1. To buy a LaFerrari, you had to buy a series of other Ferraris, submit a blood sample, and give the Italian brand your firstborn. 9. 1996 Mazda Miata. Not everything in Jay Leno's garage has a top speed of 200 miles an hour. There are some pure sports cars for the everyman, represented perfectly by the NA Mazda Miata. Leno made quite a controversial statement in a 2018 interview with Business Insider, claiming that the Miata and original Prius will become collector's items one day. It's whatever you grew up in, it's whatever you went to your prom in, it's whatever your dad used to take you to Sunday ice cream in, said Leno. That's the car the next generation will collect. Leno is a big fan of the Miata's gearbox, high-revving engine, and fun approach to motoring. It was also cheap, which means Mazda sold a lot of them. That means there's an entire generation who grew up admiring the Miata who now have the funds to buy one. We're big Miata fans at CarBuzz. If a man who owns a Porsche Carrera GT, McLaren P1, and McLaren F1 still gets simple thrills from a basic roadster, you know Mazda did a good job. 10. 1934 Duesenberg Walker. Coupe. Leno owns several Duesenbergs, but the Walker Coupe is special. It's the most expensive Duesenberg ever made, with an aerodynamic body designed and built by Walker. The car was built for Josiah Lilly, the president of Lilly Pharmaceutical, who didn't like it. From there, the car would live a rather exciting life. It was sold to a politician's mistress, who then sold it to a gas station owner. Instead of using it to go to church on Sunday, the gas station owner used the straight-eight engine to tow stuff. To be fair, it was ideally suited to the task. The car weighs in excess of 6,000 pounds, and the 8-cylinder produced 265 horsepower. It's estimated that this particular car is the most expensive of all Jay Leno's cars. The worth is somewhere between $20 million to $30 million, though nobody is able to put an exact figure to it. We'll only know what it's worth to the market if Leno decides to sell, and that's not going to happen soon.